Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today I'm writing 2 words as pointers to the true self, advanced meditation practice. About 1/3 of the way in, he starts doing the meditation practice, the guided practice for the meditation part of this. I will not be reacting to that because that's something you just don't simply react to. That's something that you just do. There's no questions there, really. I mean, other than the fact that if you're doing it right or not. But I cannot answer that, and the question is not going to help anything. So, questioning certain statements and stuff obviously can help you understand it better, but questioning how to do meditation is a good thing because if you don't know how to do it right, you need to ask questions like, am I doing this correct? Am I breathing correctly? How should I breathe? Valid questions, but nothing to do that can really help you, by reacting to a video. But I mean, maybe he does explain step by step, so there's something that you can rewind and do for yourself. But anyways, it's going to get started.
Right. Okay. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahavidyan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Very good. This is working okay. Sound seems a little low. Om. Om. Can you hear me okay? All right. All right. Good. Welcome to you all. This is just the second meeting of our advanced meditation session. It gives us an opportunity to examine and learn some of the more, actually they're very important techniques that directly support our study of Advaita Vedanta, our process of self-inquiry. Our beginning point today is a very important beginning point, something fundamental that I think we don't talk about enough, and that is, you've already heard me say that if you come here to study Vedanta, you're wasting your time. You've heard me say that several times, right? Hopefully you remember why I said that. I said that because if you only gain the information that's imparted, you're wasting your time.
I find it kind of strange because I find the information very helpful. I mean, it helps me understand it a lot better. But I'm wondering if it's because because generally speaking, you're already enlightened. You're an enlightened being already. You just don't know that. The consciousness is not unenlightened. It is enlightened. So, you know, learning or understanding is kind of pointless. I'm thinking maybe along those lines. I'm not exactly sure, but I do find them helpful, genuinely and honestly. It does help me understand things, and it helps me realize certain things. The idea of the fact of who you truly are when you start peeling back the layers, you come to realize, like, you're not. I wouldn't as far as say it's not the body, or not the in the body somewhere, like in the brain maybe. Again, that's the difference that I have. It's like I don't know where my true self is at. It's either in the mind or pervasive. I'm not sure which one. I have not found a definite answer for that. Again, irrelevant. Because me knowing where it's at is not going to change where it's at. So I'm not worried about that. But understanding of who I truly am helps me a lot because I know what I am not, and I know, especially what Sadhguru says about, reading the instruction manual of the body, helps me again understand that I'm not my emotions and that I should have control over my emotions, which is very, very helpful. I've learned that when I first kind of started this in college, with the quote "Life is suffering" from Buddhism. With that in mind, I chose not to suffer. And that's the first step I have in terms of something close to Eastern philosophy, perhaps close to Advaita Vedanta, because I think both philosophies have that, life is samsara, life is suffering. So even though it was from a Buddhism textbook, from a teacher that teaches world religion, mind you, so she taught all the religions, but this one stuck out the most to me.
The information that's imparted during the teaching of Vedanta is virtually useless. Not being facetious. You may remember me describing how the teachings of Vedanta are to support your process of self-inquiry. Vedanta is self-inquiry. We require these teachings to guide that process of self-inquiry, and we use words to guide that process of self-inquiry, but we use words not to impart information. We use words like, remember, go here, go there, don't go there, go here. This idea, if it's a process of self-inquiry, we need some guidance. And you may have heard me use the metaphor of a road map. Vedanta is more like a road map than a book. A book has lots of information. A road map also has lots of information. But the purpose of the road map is not to convey information. It's to guide you to a destination. And I think that's an accurate distinction to be made.
That's really weird. I wouldn't see those two as different, honestly. That's the information that's giving. Like the path that you have to take is the information, right?
So the focus of our discussion to introduce our meditation today is how Vedanta uses words to guide that process of self-inquiry. The technical term you may not be familiar with. They call the use of words in Vedanta is called Lakshana, which means instead of using the literal main meaning of the word, rather words are used as pointers. Words point you to a truth. Now, the joke that's made about this for so long is teachers use pointers all the time. The old joke is the teacher points at the moon, tells his student to look at the moon. Look at the moon. What do you say? Chandra dekho. So look at the moon, and the disciple looks at his hand. So the hand is a pointer. And the guru holds it up in a very obvious way, but notice if the shishya's attention is in the wrong place, then it's all lost. This pointer is like words like Satchidananda. So when the guru says Satchidananda, and you say, yeah, Satchidananda, that's like looking at the hand, right? That is. Yeah, Satchidananda. You would better yet write it down. By the way, there's nothing wrong with taking notes. As a young student, I took lots of notes. That's not the point here. So the point is failure to use words as a pointer to a truth to be discovered. And that's what we want to discuss. We don't want to get stuck. Let me put it like this. Word has a meaning, and the meaning points to something. So the word has a meaning, and through that meaning it points. The problem we often have in Vedanta is we get stuck in that second step. We hear the word, we understand the meaning, but we don't go in a direction it's pointing. And I want to explain how we can learn to do that, and then we will do that in the meditation that will begin briefly. Let's take a couple of familiar words that generally we don't use words as pointers. But we can. Suppose I say the word happiness, but I ask you to use the word happiness in a Vedantic way, which means you have the word, you have the meaning, you know what happiness means. What is it pointing to? Isn't it pointing to a feeling? A feeling of happiness? The feeling of happiness is very different than the meaning of the word happiness. So is it possible for you to hear the word happiness, to understand the meaning of happiness, and to use that word as a pointer to the experience of happiness? How would you do that? I think if I ask you to use that word to feel happy, how would you do that? The easiest way to do that is to remember a happy event, a happy situation, remember someone who makes you happy, and in that way you would get to the feeling of happiness. Notice that's the third step. First comes the word, second is the meaning, and the third is an experience of happiness. Take another word, just for example, tenderness. Same thing.
So, whenever he says the experience, I get that now. So, I've always come to the understanding it, and it's kind of weird to experience something, but, I mean, not really weird to experience something, but to understand that, I guess, it's the reason why I say it's weird, because actually, the true self doesn't experience anything. So if you experience something, it's not the true self, right? And then I guess maybe that's why I'm a little confused. I think, I'm not sure. I don't know if I intended it to be that way or not in my mind when I was thinking about this. Because obviously, you want to experience your true self, but at the same time, the true self cannot be it cannot experience. It is essentially emotionless, experienceless. It's just awareness. That's all it can ever be. It's not ever aware of itself, I think, but it's always aware of everything else. I think Swami Sarvapriyananda talked about this a little bit when he, what was that? When he essentially tried to experience, like, if you keep going inwards into yourself, you cannot, because you can ever experience the subject. The subject's always experiencing the object, and the subject can never be the object. So therefore, the subject can never be experienced. So you cannot experience your true self, and the true self doesn't experience anything, because all it does is makes you aware of things. And maybe that's the reason why I was a little bit confused here about the third portion of it. But it made sense when he said experience. Also because if you look at it from, I guess, someone who has basic understanding of Advaita Vedanta, because it is about the true self experiencing things. No, that's not the right word. Because the true self doesn't experience anything; it's just aware of things. It's the ego that experiences things. How do I say? I think people who understand the basic of Advaita Vedanta understand what we're trying to say here. Essentially, is that when you have the word, the understanding of it, and an experience is actually doing the word. So you understand meditation, but if you don't meditate, then you're not experiencing it. If you talk about like enlightenment, you understand the word, you understand what it's supposed to mean, but you're not experiencing enlightenment, even though technically, you're already enlightened. But again, I've come to understand, and I don't know if I'm there yet, 100%. I know I am partially there. I know I'm detached from my emotions at the very least. So, meaning that if I feel emotions, I don't have to react to it. And I know it's something separate from me that I can either accept or reject. So there's still the, I guess you could say, the ego association with the true self in there, but also the true self knowing that I'm not attached to the emotion, but I can interact with it as in with the ego. So there's I guess maybe a close tie between the ego and the true self there, from my perspective. That's the reason why I don't consider myself enlightened, and that's the reason why I still have this duality of the world, not necessarily, I guess, both duality and as in I have a different perspective. Like I have the perspective of true Advaita Vedanta. There's only one reality, and also is it Samkhya, where there is duality in the world. Uh, that being the world is real, the material world's real, and also the Brahman is real. They're two separate realities. Brahman is what is what pervades all, but the material world is also something real, which is the philosophy that I want to try to get into, which I keep failing to get into it.
You have the word tenderness. You know what tenderness means. But if I ask you to use that word as a pointer to actually feel tenderness, again, you might use, picture someone or some situation, remember something. That would be an aid. And you'd probably need to use some kind of aid like that because you may not feel particularly tender right here at the moment. There's nothing much in this experience to evoke that feeling of tenderness. But now this is an example using ordinary words. Vedanta doesn't use ordinary words. We use words loaded with so much meaning, which can very powerfully point, and I'm going to make an extremely important point here in just a moment, so please follow with me. When we use words like Sat, Chit, Ananda, so you get the word Sat. Sat means existence, and it's pointing to what? Now, this is where it gets really tricky. I guess I'm now presuming that not only you know how to meditate, I'm going to assume that you have listened to these teachings of Vedanta to some extent, since here at our Arshabodha Center, meditation for us is integral to our spiritual practice of Advaita Vedanta. So this is not meditation separate from Vedanta, it's meditation as part of our Vedantic process of self-inquiry. So, back to that word Sat. So the word Sat leads to a meaning of Sat, which is pure existence. Now that is going to point, it's going to point to what? And I hope you won't make the mistake of saying experience. And many people will. You can have an experience of happiness. Fine. You can have an experience of tenderness. Fine. Does it make sense to have an experience of existence? Especially when you understand that Satchidananda is not talking about something that you can experience. It's describing you, your true nature, Atma. And Atma is not something you experience. In fact, isn't Atma the experiencer? Right? So if Atma is the experiencer, Sat, which is used to describe the experiencer, cannot be experienced. And if you thought, oh yeah, I have to experience it, just include yourself with most people who don't really understand Vedanta properly. This is a common mistake, and if it's not clear to you, I hope you'll attend more of our Vedanta classes. It will become clear to you that Satchidananda is not something to be experienced. Then what are we pointing
State of being?
to? Now,
Only because of bliss. Existence is a state of being. Consciousness is a state of being. Bliss is a state of being. It's not something to be experienced. It's something to be essentially in. I believe. I wonder if that's what it means.
and here's where my example pretty weak example, I think, of things like happiness and tenderness is very different than these words Satchidananda. Because happiness and tenderness are something you may or may not have, right? Satchidananda is who you are. So you can't be without Satchidananda. It's describing your true nature. It's always present as your true self. You don't have to get it. You don't have to find it. You don't have to evoke it. It's already here, now, available for appreciation. Notice I didn't say experience. It's available to appreciate. To appreciate means, appreciate is a very subtle word. It's not used much in this Vedantic context. To appreciate, actually we're going to end up using it as a metaphor to contemplate on it. To appreciate your nature as Satchidananda Atma is to contemplate on your true nature as Satchidananda Atma. Let me explain what that means. When the word Sat comes, it has the meaning pure existence. It's pointing then to a contemplation of the fact that I exist. Notice that I exist is a present truth. It's a present reality, an already existent truth, a reality, but a reality that who walks around thinking, oh, I exist, it's something we don't think about. It's not a necessary fact that you have to exist. You might not have existed. If your parents never met, you would not have existed. So we naturally take it for granted, but note what I'm describing now is a kind of contemplation. That is, if Sat means pure existence, then the appreciation or contemplation on Sat means to appreciate that, yes, I am an existent being. The recognition of that truth. And we don't want to get into a long discussion of nididhyasana today, but to recognize what you already know is one of the key features of nididhyasana. We'll talk about all that another time. We won't have time tonight. To recognize what you already know for the sake of clarity, for the sake of assimilation. Okay. Same we can do with chit, consciousness. So chit, the Sanskrit word chit, means what? Consciousness or awareness. We use the word synonymously. And awareness means what? Right now, you are aware of what's happening. The awareness because of which you know what you're experiencing right now, that awareness is present as you, not something you have. It's who you are. So here's another kind of pointing. Chit points to consciousness. Consciousness points to the meaning. Consciousness points to the awareness of what's happening right now. You are observing what's happening right now. You know what's happening right now. In our meditation, we use the familiar word sakshi, awareful witness, or observer. We'll see that later. And finally, ananda, another pointer. So the word ananda means what? And here you may have a wrong meaning, because if you use the meaning bliss, you haven't been attending my classes. Because when we're talking about your true nature, as we said earlier, it's not something you can experience. It's the experiencer. So therefore, ananda in this context, elsewhere ananda can mean bliss, But when we're using Ananda to describe your true self, Atma, it can't mean an experiential bliss. Then what is it pointing to? It's pointing to the completeness, the fullness, the perfection, the divinity of your true nature. It's pointing to the perfect peace which remains when your mind is perfectly silent. That state of perfection. Perfect peace, perfect silence equals perfect peace. And the word Ananda captures that. And now pointing to it means to appreciate it. How can you appreciate your true nature as perfect peace if you're agitated? You can't. Which is why meditation is so crucial. You have to meditate first before you can do this kind of contemplation. You have to make your mind quiet first. You don't really have to make your mind quiet to, in my examples of happiness and tenderness, you don't have to actually, you have to put your mind in a certain condition. Isn't it true? So then you put your mind in a condition of happiness or condition of tenderness using whatever technique you might like to use. So in order to use these words Satchidananda, Atma as pointers, before you can make that step from meaning to what it's pointing to. By the way, I keep pointing over here. There's nothing I should be pointing here, right? Because that's where it's pointing. It's pointing within. It's pointing to our inner self, to our true experience. And one thing that's very clear is this inner inquiry, this turning within, is effective only when our minds are calm and focused. So, what we're going to do today, in fact, most of our sessions will be structured like this. There'll be an introduction. Then when we begin the session, there'll be just plain old meditation. And when I say plain old meditation, it simply means make your mind shut up. That really is plain old meditation. Make your mind quiet. And then that prepares us for the final part of the meditation. The first part of the meditation, of our sessions, the introduction, will be different each week. The middle part, meditation, will likely be more or less the same each week. And I want to talk about that right now in just a moment. And then the last part, the contemplation, which is really what's unique about this advanced meditation session. That will be related then to the first part, to the introduction. Okay, how are we doing on time? All right, that middle part, making your mind quiet. This being an advanced meditation session, I presume you all know how to meditate. More than that, you know what kinds of meditation techniques work best for you, and you know what kind of meditation techniques don't work very well for you. So what we're going to do this evening, and in most of our future sessions, we didn't do this last time, but generally I think this is effective, and that is in that middle part, when we start meditating, I will guide you through some preliminary steps like we do in our Saturday morning meditations. But then when it comes to the actual practice of meditation, I'm going to ask you to use whatever technique you personally find to be most effective. If I lead the practice, the practice I choose will be helpful for some of you and not so helpful for others. So it's crucial that you choose. So right now, you have to choose the technique you are going to employ And you'll have 5 or 10 minutes in silence, in mostly silence, to practice that technique in the middle part of our session to prepare you for the final part. And let me be very clear. The effectiveness of the final part, the contemplation, the effectiveness of that contemplation will depend entirely on how well your mind has been prepared through your practice of meditation that precedes. So if you're not very effective in making your mind really quiet and really focused, then you're not going to find the final part very satisfying. If you are not very experienced in meditation, I highly encourage you to practice more. And I think you all know that I have a course on meditation freely available on my YouTube channel. So please, if you need help, get that practice and do that practice so that otherwise your sessions won't really be of that much benefit to you. And I really want you, the practices we are going to take up each month are, I find, extremely helpful, extremely profound, but they do require a lot of preparation. So keep that in mind. Okay, I think.
Okay, so I mean, just for those who actually go to him, I mean, obviously watch his videos to help practice with meditation. But hopefully at the same time, if you're struggling to understand the meditation part, that you can come to him for maybe perhaps a one-on-one on perhaps different techniques, or maybe to work on the technique that you have. I know sometimes, like, I am not much of a, was it, online schooling person. I have to be in class to do anything. Online schooling not working for me. So watching YouTube videos may not work for someone. Like, they can get the information, but they're just maybe missing something from it because it's you may be doing everything he's saying, but there may be a few things missing that could help benefit you if the person was in front of you guiding you. Oh, don't forget this and do that as you're meditating. So again, just merely for those who have access to gurus anyway, you know, when you do meditate, and they do have a YouTube channel, and you can watch their stuff initially to get most of the techniques correct, so they don't have to start from step one, and then all they have to do is just kind of tune your meditation practices so that it's a lot quicker. I don't know if there's any more.
We are ready.
Okay, I think that's it for this video. So very interesting. The thing I learned from this one is actually the experience part. It says the word, the understanding for me. So a word is spoken. I understand what the word means, and then to experience that word. And it's not the experience as in you're doing it, to experience it internally. I guess the examples he gives was like happiness or tenderness. The reason why it's internal is because obviously Advaita Vedanta is about looking inwards. So this is not something that you experience externally, but something that you look inwards and experience internally. And what I was saying about the state of being, about the Satchit Ananda, that's the state of being that you're in. I'm going to try to recover myself from that one. But yeah, it's a state of being that you're always in. It's not something that you can be without, and it's not something that, how do I say? I guess the best thing I could really say is just it's the state of being that you always are in, and never without, because that is your true nature. You know, that is always your state of being. You're always existence. You're always conscious, and you're always well. Interestingly, he says in this one is like, I know a lot of other gurus and swamis say bliss, but he says what was the word? I can't remember. It's definitely a new one that he says.
Meaning, because if you use the meaning bliss, you haven't been attending my classes. Because when we're talking about your true nature, As we said earlier, it's not something you can experience. It's the experiencer. So therefore, Ananda in this context, elsewhere Ananda can mean bliss. But when we're using Ananda to describe your true self, Atma, it can't mean an experiential bliss. Then what is it pointing to? It's pointing to the completeness, the fullness, the perfection, the divinity of your true nature. It's pointing to the perfect peace which remains when your mind is perfectly silent.
Okay, the perfect you, to summarize all of that, the completeness, the perfection, the divinity of who you are. Interesting. And I can understand why that means bliss, why it's translated to bliss. I'm kind of curious. Is that the meaning of Ananda? Because I've always heard everyone else say bliss, and this is the first time I've heard it not necessarily translate to bliss, or even though he says in other contexts it is bliss. But in terms of your true nature, it's the perfect you, the perfect, uh, the perfect divinity of who you truly are. Let me know in the comments below. But anyways, instead of this one, words as pointers to the true self. If you wish to do the meditation part, please go to his channel and do watch a lot of his videos. He's very, very, in my opinion, at least, I guess maybe he's a Westerner and I am mostly a Westerner, or I've lived most of my life in the Western world. I can understand what he's saying. He knows how to explain it, I guess, in a Western mindset, I suppose, and the examples are really good. Um, and I don't know what else to say to that. I mean, it's just he does a very he explains it so basic that it's very understandable. But obviously, once you understand the basics, you can take the more advanced classes or advanced I would say courses, just the advanced versions of Advaita Vedanta, so you can actually go to understand the different understandings of Advaita Vedanta. Because the thing is if you can't understand the meanings behind this, it's, even though he says understanding this is useless, I find it helpful. But if you don't understand a lot of the meaning, you're not going to help yourself. You're not going to get very far in it, because unless you somehow just understand that your true self is perfect bliss, such as Ananda, then you're gonna need to understand Advaita Vedanta to help you guide you to get that directions. Anyways, that's my reaction to this. If you like my content, please consider subscribing, thumbs up the sign down below. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next vid.